How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another video. Today we have a very exciting topic to discuss. We're actually going to be going into detail regarding the potential that's in store for cryptocurrencies in the same vein of course, Stellar, Lumens, and of course taking into consideration its cousin XRP. Really, we're going to be weighing the pros and cons of these establishment cryptocurrencies as things are moving forward in the context of the current climate of cryptocurrency and the things that we've been seeing. And now, all that being said, now, first of all, you have to give credit where credit is due. Stellar really has maintained strong over these controversial times in the cryptocurrency space. We've seen the market cap drop dramatically from its all-time highs at the end of 2017, and Stellar remains still strong, remains relatively similar to where we've always expected Stellar to be, and that trust is really going to pay off in a long-term perspective. You could really tell that the team that's working on Stellar has an idea of how the global community is going to be functioning and the different aspects that are capable and really can function to a cryptocurrency's benefit that really aren't even being utilized by some of the top names. So a new milestone for Stellar: 25 million payments, 1 million active account milestone. So this is really interesting to see Stellar really making these interesting leaps and bounds, and it's a pretty decent day for the overall cryptocurrencies. Things are looking up, particularly not necessarily looking great. Of course, I mean, this is sort of just sideways if you think about taking into consideration where we were, how much of a hit a lot of people must have taken over these past couple of months. But then again, you've also got to have a pretty good read on the situation. I mean, it's pretty much no-brainer. You should never be buying at all-time highs. That's essentially the common, that's really what people say. Essentially, obviously you can make your own decisions, do your own research, but I mean, it is interesting to see how these establishment cryptocurrencies like Stellar, because the reason I give Stellar that label of being an establishment cryptocurrency is because it's essentially in the same vein as XRP. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to shit on XRP in this video. I'm not a hater of that sort of way of doing things, because you have to understand the banks are going to have their own approach to this new paradigm of cryptocurrency, and it might not exactly jive with the overall philosophies that were the foundation principles of the beginning of Bitcoin and even Ethereum, these various different more decentralized options. But of course, you have to understand how XRP and Ripple making leaps and bounds and strides forward to really leverage decentralization in their technology. And I think that Stellar is along for the ride when it comes to XRP. And somebody who's a fan of the Ripple technology, it makes sense to have Stellar right next door to it, because essentially whatever we see happening with Ripple XRP is going to be mirrored to its cousin, the fork off of it, Stellar, of course. And it is interesting to see all these different positive things in the news regarding Stellar, as we've seen this technology really come a long way in such a short amount of time. And really, the banks are going to have their own way of incorporating these different technologies. And I think that now we do see Stellar and Ripple as really the chosen ones in that regard, as far as the various different institutional the sides of that aspect and that whole conversation going on right there. Now, of course, make sure that you guys are following Stellar on their official Twitter account, and obviously Twitter is a really great resource to stay up to date on all these different cryptocurrencies and so forth. And just looking at the news feed regarding Stellar, I mean, the most latest stuff is usually most dependable. I mean, just interesting in my opinion. I mean, I was looking at some of these different charts and so forth that have been really projecting an interesting future for Stellar, as we've been seeing these different partnerships and a lot of these new announcements. From a data analytical perspective, I would say that Stellar really does have the technology behind it that's forward thinking and really could drive us into the next side of this, essentially, as things continue to move forward. So no, I'm pretty much feeling pretty optimistic about Stellar, and in my opinion, we could definitely be seeing some really interesting things happening in the future, as far as the way that they can essentially monetize various different sectors of society that aren't already perceived as being monetizable. But of course, the internet does open up an entirely new paradigm, and we're really witnessing that unfolding in front of us right now. So of course, you might not necessarily be a fan of the Stellar sort sort of ideology, that sort of philosophy that Stellar was built on, but you have to understand where certain things are going to be going. I mean, Stellar in the number 6 position. I have basically a theory about the top 10 cryptos. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say that by 2020 we won't be seeing cryptos in the top 10 that are under $1. It's just not going to be even within the realm of people's imaginations to think about how cheap these technologies were at one point. So we are definitely ahead of the game in a large respect as far as these different things are concerned. But of course, I'd always recommend that you guys do your own research, of course, come to your own conclusions, gather your own information, and essentially self-educate, because you have the entire internet at your disposal. You could pretty much get any information for free using the internet. And if you're not doing that, then you're pretty much a sucker, because at the end of the day, that's what everybody's doing out there. There's really no need to really invest in information when you could pretty much just readily have all these new developing technologies right in front of our faces. Now, of course, there's always exceptions that prove every single rule, but down to the fundamental core of what I'm saying, I'm sure that there's people out there who resonate with the general theme that I'm trying to communicate here. And I think that it's also a theme that's echoed across cryptocurrency as we see society in the whole way that people, the grandmas and grandpas and everybody, were essentially used to the functionality and the way that things were proceeding before the internet. And then the internet was really that big game changer, and of course the next generation is then raised upon the principles that made it possible for that amount of communication to really revolutionize the way that things function. And we're seeing that same sort of thing happening as far as the different variables that involve the financial and of course the global community essentially. And I think that XLM definitely does have that potential to leverage the global community and the different variables that are really being on the cutting edge. So definitely a lot of interesting things to look forward to. I'm certainly going to be paying attention to where Stellar is going. Of course, towards the next sort of a year time frame is definitely how I'm interested in paying attention to where these different variables develop. But yeah, certainly a lot of very interesting things, a lot of really interesting publicity Stellar's way. Of course, just looking at the different videos, I'll definitely be including a link to give some of these YouTubers a shout out. I was actually watching this video by CryptoDon. I found this was a really interesting video. Definitely I'll definitely include a link to it down in the description, just in the interest of sharing the conversation and providing different points of view so that we can all essentially learn from each other's points of view, and if necessary learn from each other's mistakes and so forth. And I think it's important to definitely build up this community and so forth. But yeah, all that being said, I mean, it is interesting to see what's been happening involving Stellar on the global scale. It's definitely gaining mainstream attention, and as we have seen before, Ripple has essentially been on the Ellen DeGeneres show. It's got Ashton Kutcher and all these different celebrities promoting it, which is a good sign. Certainly an interesting indication of where the establishment expects to take cryptocurrency and drive it forward, really into the next phase of this, essentially this as society becomes to adapt and essentially learn to utilize these different leveraging technologies that really are going to make this paradigm shift one that's going to possibly be bigger than the internet. So of course, remember, I'm not a financial advisor. This video is for entertainment, educational purposes only. You already know I'm not your dad, but all that being said, I mean, my opinion regarding Stellar and so forth, I mean, although I might not necessarily agree with the philosophy of Ripple and of course the establishment doing what they're doing, but at the end of the day, I want to make money like anybody else. I'm definitely interested in seeing how these things go, and of course similarly interested in like Bitcoin, gold, Ethereum. I think is definitely one that's going to be interesting. Nano, certainly interesting. A lot of different variables coming together in a short amount of time, and before you know it, it'll be the next paradigm will be here. And of course it is interesting to see the cryptos that are getting hit the hardest, of course, but I mean, and then but who can't, obviously in a bull market, which we are starting to see sort of develop as the market cap reapproaches getting back to essentially stability, we're seeing some really interesting things that are developing right in front of us. So hope you guys have found this video educational, and I will see you guys in the next video. Have a good one.